שיעור בגמרא במציע פרק השואל דף צדיק ה' עמוד בייז. Line begins with the word chinom, starting with the words Omar Rav Amnuna. We're going to have to learn one sugya. Okay, so before we learn, the Gemara brought a brisa. That the brisa talks that we all know that Ba'al Avimai means that the owner did something for the shomer at the time of the borrowing or giving him to watch. Now, the item that the owner did for the shomer or the borrower is not nothing to do with the item. For example, if I borrow a cell phone from the owner and the owner made me a cup of tea or paint my house and it was driving for me, so he was not working with the cell phone, it's still considered Ba'al Avimai. The Gemara is going to bring another opinion. Then in short, that opinion is going to say that in order to be the din of Ba'al Avimai, you need to work with the item. That's number one. That's point number one. And point number two, that not only you need to work with the item, you need to work with the item the entire time from the shas of she'elo till the time of the oinus. So when the Torah says, can you see the psukim, Mishmael? So when the Torah says, see it? When the Torah says, when is Ba'al Avimai? When was the owner with him? He learns literally the owner was with him the entire time. From the time from the time of the borrowing, till the time of the mace. And also I need to work with the item itself. The Gemara is going to challenge it. The Gemara is going to bring a brisa that we brought in Shir number 4. And the Gemara is going to challenge the first thing that he has to work with the item itself, and then the Gemara is going to challenge the second detail that he needs to work with the eye. He needs to work. Ba'al Avimai needs to be the whole time. Okay, so let's start. Make sure you're holding with the Rashi at the same time. One finger the Gemara, one finger the Rashi. Like this, we can just have the flow. If you keep your fingers on the Gemara and on the Rashi, you're going to be able to have the flow of the learning. Okay. So again, the line begins with the word chinom, or the words Omar Rav Amnuna, and in Rashi, the line begins with the word la'oilo muchayev. And the Dibur HaMaschi la'oilo muchayev. Okay, so let's start. Zog de'ile Omar Rav Amnuna. Rav Amnuna says la'oilom is always going to be chayev, meaning even if it's Ba'al Avimai, meaning no matter what, the shoel is always going to be chayev. Till he's going to fulfill these two conditions. And then he's going to be potter. What's the two conditions? One, till if he borrowed the cow, so the owner is plowing with the cow. Another example, or if he borrowed the donkey, he's walking with the donkey, he's leading the donkey, so actually he's working with the donkey. So that's point number one. And point number two, till the owner will be Ba'al Avimai from the time of the borrowing till the time of the oinus. Rashi. Lo'ilo muchayev says Zahili ki Rashi v'afilu Ba'al Avimai, even if it's Ba'al Avimai, ad she'behem u'ba'alim b'mlocha achas. Kegoin, so Rashi says, for example, im poroi, if he borrowed a cow, ye'yabal choyresh beporosoi, the owner will plow with his cow, l'tzoyrech hashoel b'sodei, for the need of the shoel, of the borrower, in his field. Or if he borrow a donkey, the owner will lead the donkey or go after the donkey to lead it. Okay? Back to the Gemara. So the Gemara is trying to point out where did Rabbi Amnuna got his svara. Alme, we see, Kosova Rabbi Amnuna holds Ba'al Avimai. When it says the words Ba'al Avimai in the Parsha, Akulam Milsa Mashma, it goes on the entire thing. It goes from the V'chiyishal, from the borrowing, till V'nish Baroimesh. That's it. That's the opinion of Rabbi Amnuna. Comes Rove and challenge it. Mosiv Rove. Rove asked a kasha on Rabbi Amnuna from a brisa that we learned last year. Shoalo v'shol be'aloimo. If he borrowed the cow and he borrowed the owner with the cow. Second case, socha v'socha be'aloimo. He rented the cow and he hired the owner with the cow. Sochra v'shal be'olayim. Third case, he rented a cow and he borrowed the owner with this. He borrowed the owner with that at the same time. Fourth case, sho'alo v'sochra be'olayim. He borrowed the cow and he hired the balabais together with the cow. So these are the four cases. Now the Braisa continues. Af al pi, the Braisa is bringing a chiddush. Even though shabe'oli moisi melocha b'mokim acher, even though the balabais is doing work other places, somewhere else, umeisa potter, and she died this potter. So what do we see from here? When the Braisa says that he's working somewhere else, so now we're going to try to challenge Rav Amnunah's first thing, that he has to work with the item. Later on the Gemara is going to challenge his second detail, that it has to be Baal of Imoy the whole time. Right now the Gemara is only looking at the first detail, that he has to work with the item itself. So what do we see? My love, obviously, when it says Shabali Moisa Melocha B'Mokim Acher, what does it mean B'Mokim Acher? B'Mlocha Acheres. It means other places. So we see against Rav Amnunah, who says that you have to work with the cow, with the item itself. Let's see if we have Rashi. No Rashi. And for the Eliki Gemara, no. It's not, when it says in the Braisa, Mokim Acher, it doesn't mean another work. It means B'Oisa Melacha. It means with that, he's still working with the cow. So if so, what does that mean? He's working with a cow, remote control. We didn't have it in the time of the Gemara, that you were able to work with a cow remote control. You had to be there. So what does that mean? In another place. And for the Eliki Gemara, the Komarfi ve'ozil kamo. He's not literally with the cow. He's just a few feet ahead of the cow, and he's preparing the ground for the cow. He's making the ground soft for the cow. Rashi, the Kamar Filei ve'ozil kamo, says the Helike Rashi, Choifer ve'oilech bakarka lefoneo. He's digging and he's going in the ground right in front of the behemoth. B'mora, he's going with a shovel, Tomit kanset l'rapoiso, to make it soft. Why does he have to make it soft? Sheikosher, because it's hard. So the Gemara was able to explain right now that B'mokim Acher means a few feet away. It's still considered B'mokim Acher, but he's still working with the cow, because the boat plowing is, and he's preparing the field for the cow to be able to plow. Frag the Eliki Gemara, it doesn't make sense. Now the Gemara is going to bring, in the last year the Gemara did not bring the end of the Braisa, and now the Gemara is going to bring the end of the Braisa. Frag the Eliki Gemara, for me, the Seif al Gaba, since in the end of the Braisa, when it says another case, and the other case it says, even if the owner is plowing al Gabo with the item itself, is going to be chayev, so reishe b'mlocha acheres. So obviously in the beginning of the Braisa, when it says Mokoi Macher, so Mokoi Macher means another place in another job. Again, in the Sefer, as soon as we're going to see that the Sefer is going to bring a whole new case, in a case that is chayev, even though he's working with the behemoth. So if in the Sefer, when he's chayev, even though if he's working with the behemoth, it says al gabo, meaning with the behemoth. So obviously mokemacher means somewhere else. In order to understand it clearly, 1 second, let's look in the Braisa. Let's read the Braisa inside, and we'll have clarity on the question from the Gemara. The Ktani Sefer, we learn in the Sefer. These are the cases. Shoalo v'achar kach shol ba'alaimo. He borrowed the cow at 10 o'clock, and then later he borrowed the owner to work. Socho, second case, he rented the cow, v'achar kach, and later he hired the owner to work with the behemoth. So we have two cases. Now, what do we have the two cases? At 10 o'clock he rented or he borrowed the cow, and at 11 o'clock he hired or borrowed the palabais. So comes the Braisa and says, Af al pi shaba'alim choyshim al gabo, even though the owner is working, is plowing with the behemoth itself, he's going to be chayiv. Why is he going to be chayiv? A simple explanation. Because at the time of the she'ela, at the time of the borrowing, the owner was not working. We need the owner to work at the time of the she'ela. But the Gemara points out, if in the Sefer when it says the Chiddush is al gabo means literally with the behemoth. So obviously when it says Mokei Macher means a different place, not with the behemoth. Let's read the Rashi.
A different place from the behemoth.
A different place.
From what? From the behemoth?
From the behemoth, yes. Rashi. What me the sefer al gabo mamash. From that, and in the sefer when it says al gabo literally means with the behemoth. The tani lo mishum rebuso, because we're learning it because of a chiddush. Lashmein and afiloch echayv. Because the Braisa wants to tell me that even though he's actually working with a cow, it's not enough to make him potter, to make the shoel potter. He's still going to be chayv because it was not ba'alavimo in the time of the sheila. Reishe mokei macher nami denokatlo. So when it says in the Reishe the word mokei macher, obviously brought the case, the words of mokei macher to tell me a chiddush. Mishum rebuso, the words of chiddush, that what? That even though he worked somewhere else, even though he's potter, if he works with something else. So what do we see? If the seif of the Braisa, the chiddush of the Braisa was that even though he's working actually with the behemoth, he's going to be chayv. So the chiddush of the Reish is that even though he's working b'mokei machem, which means in a different place, in a different job, he's going to be potter. That's a chiddush. So how can you, Rabbi Pinchas, tell me that you need to work with the item itself? We see clearly that you don't need for Baal Avimo to work with the item itself. Continue the Rashi. Shoalo v'chakach shoal ba'aleo. So explain Rashi. Why is he chayv? Oy v'lo hayavi b'shah sheila, since it was not Baal Avimo at the time of the sheila. Af al pi shoyu b'shah shvuro mei. So even though he was in the time of the oinus, afilu achi chayv, even though so he's still chayv. Why? We need that the honor will be ba'alavimo in the time of the borrowing of the behemoth. How do we know? Because the Yolif Lelakamei, as the Gemara is going to learn later on. Okay, so with that, good. Let's see what the Gemara is going to. Let's see what Rabbi Amnuna is going to answer. Emfer the Elike Gemara, and we're holding 4 lines from the top of the white line in the middle of the line. Amri, the Yeshiva Bochim, are going to answer this question on behalf of Rabbi Amnuna. Reisha v'seifa b'oisa melacha. No, you're right. No, the Reisha of the Braisa and the Seifa of the Braisa talks about when he's working with the cow. Now, if he was working with the cow, what is the chiddush? What's a chiddush? So the Gemara says, v'reisha rebusa kamash malon, and the Reisha is a chiddush. V'seifa rebusa kamash malon, and the Seifa is a chiddush. Now the Gemara explains. Reisha ribusa kamash malon. Reisha is the chiddush, as he wants to let us know that what? What's the Reisha? The Reisha says that af al pi shavali moisim melocha b'mokei macher. Now we explained that b'mokei macher means a few feet away. So the chiddush is the af al gav delav al gabo el boisim melocha. Even though that he was not working with the cow itself, he's not literally pulling the cow or leading the cow, mamish leading the cow himself. He was a few feet away from the behemoth. He's still going to be potter, meaning we don't need to be mamish with the behemoth. That's the chiddush of the Braisa. And why is he potter? Given the ba'alim b'shah she'ele potter. Since the owner was working in the time of the she'ele, he's potter. So the all chiddush of the Reisha is that we don't need to be mamish of the behemoth, a few feet away from the behemoth is also good. The Sefer rebusa kamash malon. And what's the chiddush of the Sefer? The afar gav al gabo. Even though that he was literally working with the cow itself, he's still going to be chayv. Why? Given the lo yibalim b'shah she'ila chayv. Since the owner was not Baal Avimo at the time of the she'ila, is chayv. So that's the answer that the Yeshiva Bochim answered on behalf of Rabbi Amnuna. 1 second. The answer of Rabbi Amnuna is a little bit bedoichak. That means that the whole chiddush of the Braisa, in the Reisha, the chiddush of the Braisa, that he was working a few feet away, and even though it's a few feet away, it's considered with the behemoth, and he's going to be potter because it was Baal Avimo b'shah she'ela. And the Sefer, the chiddush, that even though he was working with the behemoth, since it was not Baal Avimo b'shah she'ela, he's going to be chayv. Let's see Rashi. 1 second, please. Boise Melacha, says Rashi, Ukedeomar Reisha, the Koozil, Ve'omar Pekama, as we said before, that he goes and he makes soften the ground in front of the behemoth. The Sefer, and what's the Sefer that he's working with the behemoth itself? Shemanigo b'mal medaboko. He leads her with a pointer of the when you lead the cow. The Abimam Shel Gabo, that is literally working with the behemoth. Yes, Shmai.
There is another opinion that says it doesn't have to be in that place?
That's our opinion. Well, how did we learn Baal Avimai?
That's how we learned it. So
That's how we learned it.
Brisa be the other opinion.
Rav Amnona is on a moil. We can disagree on a brisa.
So where's the machlekes?
There's no machlekes. It's no machlekes.
There's
You
a
can't
machlekes between Rav Amnona and the other.
And the way we learned, the way everybody else learned.
So Rav Amnona and
Rav
everyone else.
Amnona came with. We learned that.
Everyone else who? Everyone else on your own?
Everyone else is Amiroim. And we're gonna see that the Brisa, it's a Brisa learns that way.
So then how could we say that against the Brisa?
We're not saying anything. We're holding with the Brisa. The Brisa cannot apply to what Rav Amnona. So far, Rav Amnona is making. The Brisa says clearly that even though you do work somewhere else, so we're literally translating what somewhere else with a different melacha. When you say somewhere else, what does it mean somewhere else? The cow is here, and the owner is doing some painting for me, he's driving for me in New York.
But we try to explain it. Like,
But here, Rabbi Pinchas is trying to patch it up. That somewhere else, meaning with the cow a few feet away.
but we explain it the regular way.
We explain
it the regular way.
the regular way, right? That's correct. Let's see what the Gemara says. Shfreg the Elike Gemara. Aymai. What kind of an answer is that? Meaning, what kind of chiddush is that? Meaning, if the Brisa wouldn't say af al pi, when the Brisa said the word af al pi, even though the Baalim is mokay macher, he's potu, and in the Sefer the Brisa says even though he's mamish on top of her, he's chayev. So the Brisa wants to tell you the biggest chiddush that possibly can be done. So when you take a chiddush, you take it all the way to the extreme. The Reisha is to the extreme, mokay macher means somewhere else. And the Sefer is to extreme al gaba, meaning with the beima. What Rav Amnona did, he minimized the chiddush. He made Reish and the Sefer talking about mokei macher means a few feet away, and al gaba means with the beima. But either way, both of them are with the behemoth. So you're not maximizing the chiddush, you're minimizing the chiddush, which makes no sense. Let's see what the Gemara says. Aymai. What kind of an answer is that? Well, makes sense if you said Reisha b'mlocha cheres, that the Reisha, when it says Mokay Macher, means with a different job. V'seifer boisa melocha, and it's Seifer when it says Al Gabo. Ainu, when it says V'seifer boisa melocha, when it says in the Seifer Al Gabo means with the beime. Ainu Rabusa. That's a big chiddush because you pull the chiddush all the way to the extreme, either the both direction. Al Gabo means mamish on the beime. And Mokay Macher means somewhere else with a different job. Elo Yamret, Reisha v'Sefer b'Oisa Melocha. But if you're going to say that the Reisha and the Sefer, both of them talking about with the cow, what's the chiddush? Either b'Oisa Melocha. You're minimizing the chiddush. You're making the chiddush only talking and making that the Brisa, instead of making that the Brisa talks about too far away situation, you're talking about that the Brisa talks about the exact same situation with the same melacha, which doesn't make sense. Let's read the Rashi.
Why can't it make sense? Why can't you just say?
Because when you make a chiddush maya, you make it as biggest as possible. Because otherwise you wouldn't read. Otherwise the Brisa would not have written afal, even though the Brisa would.
Maybe according to our own it's not a chiddush.
Okay.
It's not.
Okay. You're right.
Meaning, no, it can't be a chiddush because that's not the halacha.
But it doesn't make sense to minimize the chiddush. Meaning,
Because
it says
no,
mokay.
It isn't a chiddush because it's not.
It says mokay macher. It says mokay macher, and it means with the same. The meaning is literally changing the literally meaning of the words. Besides that, it's not a chiddush.
Would have said it's a different place.
And then what would?
Totally different place. Then he would be still chai because according to Manuna, it's not balavima.
You're right. But that's not what the Brisa is saying. It doesn't make sense. But you have to take it to the account that the Brisa not only doesn't make sense, meaning you can bedoichak, maybe you can say that okay, we'll swallow that. But then the Gemara, remember, Rav Amnona says two things. One thing that he has to work with the beime, so maybe you could swallow what you say. Let's see, bedoichak, you would swallow it. But then the Gemara is going to bring up clear Brisa, so says clearly that only b'shar sheila. What are you going to do with that? Over there, one second. Over there, you can't play with the Brisa.
So how can I say that?
Hamnuni did not know the brisa. We said already many times. The Amoraim did not know all the brises. So he didn't know. So now that we brought a brisa, we're going to push him off. Let's see if we have a Rashi. Rashi, Idi v'idi boisem alacho. Mamish, says Rashi. It's literally the same work. Mali marpikam or mali manigo. What's the difference if you say that he's plowing he's softening the ground a few feet away, or he's leading her the cow? What's the difference? It's literally he's working with the cow. So moke macher has to be somewhere else. Al gabo, if the gabo means with the beimo, so moke macher means to be away from the beimo. Okay, now back to the Gemara. Ve'oid. Now the Gemara is going to slug up the second detail that Rabbi Pinchas Rieber said. The second detail Rabbi Pinchas Rieber says was that Baal of Imoy has to be from the time of the Sheila till the time of the Oini. So the Gemara is going to challenge it. The Gemara is going to bring two brises who basically saying the same thing, but one of them says one way, the other one says from the other way. Meaning, one of them is going to learn from the pasuk Baal of Imoy that you only need B'shah Sheila. One of them is going to learn from Baal of Ein Imoy that you only need B'shah Sheila. Okay? But either way, it's the same thing. The meaning, the brises do not argue. It's not a machloikis. It's just different way of looking at things. How do you look at the pasuk, from the beginning to the end or from the end to the beginning? It's basically the same thing. Let's read it inside. What? No, we'll see. I don't think we need to. Let's see. Void. Tanya, it says in a Bryce. Now the Bryce is going to challenge the psukim itself. Now let's look at the psukim, and then we're going to read it inside. Okay. When it says it's an extra pasuk, when you look at the psukim, it's an extra pasuk. It says when somebody borrows something from his friend, when he's borrowing, Baal of Ein Imoy, if the owner was not with them, he has to pay. Then the pasuk. So obviously, if the owner was with them, Shmaya, if the owner was with them, he doesn't have to pay. So it's an extra pasuk. Comes the Braisa to teach me that you only choose to learn that you need Baal of Imoy in the time of the Sheila. Now the other Braisa goes backwards. It says in Baal of Imoy lo yishalem. So obviously, if in Baal of Imoy, if it says in Baal of Imoy lo yishalem, so obviously if Baal of Ein Imoy, so obviously he has to pay. So again, the beginning of the pasuk is extra. So it comes to teach you that you only need Baal of Imoy only in the time of the Sheila. How do you do that from the extra pasuk? Well, how do you get to choose? That's the next shiur. That's shiur. This is shiur number 4. This is shiur number 5. In shiur number 6, we're going to go and explain exactly how we're learning from the psukim. We're not doing it now. But right now, what we're going to do, we're going to learn from the psukim that the Braisa says clearly that you have to choose only in the time of the Sheila, and that's a direct slug up to what Rabbi Amnuna says. Let's read it inside and let's make sense to it. Void. Tanya, it says in a Braise, Mimashma shenemar in Baal of Imoy lo yishalem. When it says in the beginning of the pasuk that if it was Baal of Imoy, he doesn't have to pay. Eini idea. Don't I know already? Shim Baal of Ein Imoy shalem. Obviously, if Baal of is not with him, he has to pay. Because if the pasuk says Baal of Imoy lo yishalem, so obviously if Baal of Ein Imoy, he has to pay. So what do we need the pasuk Baal of Ein Imoy? Loi marloch, to teach you from the extra pasuk. If he was with him in the time of the barring, he doesn't need to be with him in the time of the shvura meso. But if he was with him in the time of the shvura meso, that was not enough. Why? And it's still going to be chayv. Why? Because so what do we see clearly from this brayse? That you only need to be Baal of Imoy in the time of the Sheila. Against what Rabbi Amnuna says that you need to be Baal of Imoy from the beginning till then. And now the Gemara is going to bring another brayse, the same idea but backwards. Tanya idach, we're learning another brayse. From that we learn in the pasuk that Baal of Imoy, Baal of Ein Imoy, if the owner is not with him, he has to pay. Eini yodea shim ba'al avimo lo yeshalem. Don't I know if ba'al avimo he doesn't have to pay? It's obvious. Elomata lo imarim ba'al avimo. So what do we need? The pasuk in ba'al avimo. It's extra. Lo imar lach to teach you. Kevan shiyotzem reshus ma shel shoachas b'baylim. As soon as it was ba'al avimo in the time of the she'ela, even a little bit while, umeisa is patur. That means only ba'al avimo you need to be in the shas she'ela. And the Gemara concludes, Tiyufta the Rav Hamnuna, Tiyufta, the Shlogam of Rav Hamnuna is completely, meaning, from what we say, for that Rav Hamnuna says that he needs to work with the behemoth, we slog him off from the first bride, said that it says Mokai Macher, then he can be work in a different place. And from what Rav Hamnuna says that he needs to be Baal Avimo the whole time, we slog him off from these two brides, it says clearly only Baal Avimo in the time of the Sheila. Let's read the Rashi. Tanya Idach. V'oitanya. Line begins with Lima Nigo. V'oitanya. Tiyufta la Rav Hamnuna b'sefer de Milsa. It's going to be a shlog up to Rav Hamnuna in the second point of his word. The Omar, the Rav Hamnuna says, Be'inan shi'emoi misha shelat shvura meso. Rav Hamnuna said that you need Baal Avimo the entire time. So we're going to bring a braise to shlog him up. Next Rashi.
Does that mean that it could be the entire time, which means that he doesn't, let's say he doesn't work at the beginning, but he works like a day after he borrowed it or something. Or it means that he has to work all the days until he died.
According to who?
Let's say he died.
According to who?
Rav
Hamnuna?
Let's say he died
the
5
whole
days
time.
after
You answered
he
your
borrowed.
question. Answer your question. The whole entire time. Yes. Every single day.
Even at night and
Whatever workable
Every
time.
single
Every workable time. Okay? He has to be the one. Let's say if I borrow a car, so the owner has to be the driver. Literally. And he has to drive me wherever I'm going. And that's the only way. Which in idea, Rav Hamnuna's opinion is not making sense. It's making more sense than our opinion.
It's making more sense.
His opinion makes more sense than our opinion. Remember, Baal Avimo is a big chiddush. So Rav Hamnuna says, you make such a chiddush to make a guy potter even an oines and everything. Everything is off. So it's all, one second, it's only, if you minimize the chiddush, you make it much less. You have to work with the item, which makes more sense.
If he's working with the item, let's say he's driving the car or he's working with the cow, then if an illness happened, he was the one that was involved in it.
That's correct. Our way of looking at it, the guy doesn't have to work with the item, can be somewhere else, as long as he's doing something. And it's only in the time of the Sheila, those few seconds, that's it.
No, but
it's a big chiddush. It's a big chiddush. But that's halacha. That's Xeres HaKosov. Remember, we spoke about it. It's Xeres HaKosov.
Which is a little bit.
Yeah,
he
but
might not work at that time.
You're right. Okay, let's read the Rashi. Lo imaloch, the next Rashi. Lo imaloch oya imo v'chulu. Ve'achi ashmeinon kro. And that's what we're learning from the pasuk. Be'olo ve'inimo b'shas sheilo. If the owner was not with him at the time of the borrowing, even though he was with him at the time of the oinus, it's still chayav. And later on, in Shiur number 6, the Gemara is going to explain exactly how we understand it from the extra pasuk. I mean, just because you have an extra pasuk, you're learning only the time of the Sheila. Maybe you're learning only the time of the Shvur of Meso. How do you choose one? Tanya Idach, next Rashi. Says Rashi, the brises are the same. Even though one starts from the pasuk Baal of Imoy, and one starts from the pasuk Baal of Ein Imoy, is no machloikes. Elomar dorish b'ayim hashmuruso. One brise learns from this way of learning, umay dorish b'ayim hashmuruso. And one learns from the other way of learning. That's it. Veloy gabe adoditani, they were not learning the same yeshiva. It probably was two different yeshivas and two different places. And that's why there were two different ways of learning it. But that's the idea is the same thing that we need Baal Avimo b'shas. The last Rashi, Tiyufta the Rav Hamnuna says Rashi betarvayu milsei, in both of his halachas. B'maydo maroisa melacha beinon. In the halach, first halacha that we need to work with the item itself, oisvina mebraisa kamaisa. We slog him off from the first braisa. The katani how, because we learn afal pi shabali moisim melacha oisim amokemacha. even though they honor those works somewhere else. And somewhere else means somewhere else with something else. And the second halacha that he said that we need to be honored to be all the way from Shas She'elo to Shas to the time of Linus. From this Braise. Thank you so much for listening for the Shir and a good Erev Shabbos.